Hello, and welcome to Sleepy Conspiracy Theories. In this video, we will explore the complete history and belief system surrounding the idea of a flat Earth. From ancient worldviews to modern internet movements, this slow and steady narration will guide you through the full arc of the theory and the science that challenges it. This narration is intentionally slow, detailed, and repetitive. It is designed to help you relax, focus, or fall asleep. There will be no sudden sounds, no music, and no emotional tone. Only the steady voice of information. Now please sit back, close your eyes if you like, and let the story of the flat Earth begin. In the earliest human civilizations, the understanding of Earth's shape was not based on scientific measurements or celestial calculations, but rather on immediate perception, cultural belief, and mythological tradition. Ancient societies lacked the instruments or methodologies to directly observe the globe on a planetary scale, so the concept of a flat Earth emerged as a natural assumption based on visual experience. To the observer standing on solid ground, the Earth felt flat and unmoving, and the sky appeared as a dome arching overhead, a model that suited both daily life and cosmological reflection. In Mesopotamia, one of the world's earliest civilizations, the universe was envisioned as a flat disk surrounded by water with a solid dome above representing the sky. This model appeared in various cuneiform texts and was deeply connected to the religious and mythological frameworks of the time. The heavens were thought to rest upon mountains or pillars located at the edges of the earth, and the underworld lay beneath the terrestrial plane. Similarly, in ancient Egypt, the sky was personified as the goddess Nut, whose arched body covered the earth god Geb, while the air god Shu held the sky aloft. These cosmologies expressed not only how the world appeared, but also how it functioned in spiritual and social terms, reinforcing the notion that the earth was a level surface, bounded by the unknown. In ancient India, early Vedic texts described the earth as a flat disk, floating on a cosmic ocean, with the sun, moon, and stars revolving around it in cycles governed by divine law. These conceptions were not meant to be tested or proven, but accepted as reflections of spiritual order and cosmic hierarchy. In early Hebrew tradition, the Old Testament reflects similar ideas, portraying the earth as having foundations, corners, and a firmament above. The firmament separated the waters above from those below and served as a dwelling place for celestial bodies. The book of Genesis describes God placing lights in the firmament of heaven to divide day from night, a model consistent with a flat earth worldview. Although these descriptions were largely symbolic, they contributed to a long-standing cultural framework in which a flat and finite Earth was assumed. In the Americas, pre-Columbian civilizations also held flat Earth views. The Maya imagined the world as a square surface with 4 cardinal points, each associated with specific gods, colors, and trees. The heavens rose in tiers above this surface, and the underworld descended in layers below it. The cosmological vision was complex, but at its core, it retained the notion of a horizontal Earth bordered by supernatural realms. In Norse mythology, the Earth was seen as a flat circular disk called Midgard, encircled by a vast ocean inhabited by the world serpent Jörmungandr. The sky was held up by 4 dwarves representing the cardinal directions, and the cosmos was structured around the sacred world tree, Yggdrasil. These ancient models often positioned humanity at the center of the universe, reinforcing a sense of cosmic importance and divine design. The belief in a flat Earth was not simply a misunderstanding, but a worldview that integrated environment, spirituality, and social order. While many early philosophers began to speculate on the nature of the cosmos, including the possibility of a spherical Earth, such ideas were initially rare and lacked the widespread acceptance that flat Earth models enjoyed in the early stages of human history. In cultures where survival depended on predictable cycles and environmental observation, practicality took precedence over abstraction. The sky rotated, the sun rose and set, and the earth remained steady and vast. There was no immediate reason to imagine otherwise. Early cartographic representations from civilizations such as Babylon and Egypt depicted the known world as a flat surface surrounded by water or wilderness. These maps served both geographic and symbolic purposes, defining the known against the unknown, and anchoring cities, temples, and rulers at the center of existence. Even as astronomical observation improved, the belief in a flat Earth remained dominant because it aligned with lived experience, cultural narratives, and religious texts. There was little impetus to question a model that worked on both spiritual and practical levels. Thus, the idea of a flat Earth in ancient times was less about ignorance and more about interpretive frameworks that made sense of limited data through the lens of belief story and human observation. Only later, with the advent of empirical methods, mathematical reasoning, and long-distance travel, would these models begin to be challenged and eventually replaced. But for centuries, if not millennia, the flat Earth stood as a foundational concept, not merely as a shape, but as a symbol of order, balance, and meaning in the ancient imagination. The concept of a flat Earth was deeply rooted in early religious and mythological systems across many cultures and civilizations, and it served not only as a cosmological model, but also as a spiritual framework that shaped humanity's understanding of its place in the universe. These models were not necessarily born from ignorance, but from symbolic interpretations of the world, crafted to convey divine order, human significance, and metaphysical truth within a limited understanding of nature and science. In ancient Mesopotamian cosmology, the Earth was imagined as a flat disk floating in a vast cosmic ocean, with the sky forming a solid dome above and the underworld lying beneath. This idea was enshrined in their religious texts, rituals, and artistic representations, reflecting a belief system in which the gods controlled the celestial spheres from realms above or below. In the Babylonian Enuma Elish creation myth, the sky was constructed from the body of a slain primordial being, while the earth emerged as a habitable surface nestled within layers of divine power and chaos. This three-tiered universe was mirrored in temples, ziggurats, and sacred architecture, which represented the ascent from earth to heaven and the descent into the underworld. In early Hebrew theology, the flat earth model was also present, though often encoded in symbolic language. The Hebrew Bible describes the earth as having foundations and corners, and a firmament above separating the waters from the heavens. This firmament, or rakia, was believed to be a solid expanse upon which the sun, moon, and stars were placed to govern the day and night. The Psalms mention the earth being immovable and resting upon pillars, while the Book of Job refers to the ends of the earth and the vault of heaven as a physical structure. Such descriptions were not necessarily meant to be scientific, but they shaped a theological view in which the earth was the centerpiece of divine creation, enclosed and protected by God's celestial architecture. In early Christianity, these scriptural elements were interpreted both literally and allegorically, with some theologians maintaining belief in a flat earth, while others accepted more abstract or philosophical readings that aligned with classical Greek cosmology. The Church did not initially take an official stance, but the persistence of flat earth imagery in sermons, writings, and visual art sustained the model well into the medieval period. In Hindu cosmology, Earth was depicted as a flat disk, known as Bhumandala, surrounded by concentric oceans and mountain ranges, with Mount Meru at the center, serving as the cosmic axis. The realms of gods, humans, demons, and celestial beings were all arranged vertically and horizontally across this divine landscape, with movement through these planes symbolizing spiritual progress or decline. This model served both metaphysical and moral functions, emphasizing harmony, karma, and cosmic balance. In Buddhist tradition, similar structures were found with Mount Meru at the center and the flat earth, surrounded by various continents, oceans, and heavenly realms. These models were not scientific in the modern sense, but they offered a coherent system for understanding suffering, rebirth, and enlightenment within the confines of cosmological space. Norse mythology, too, embraced a flat earth worldview, where Midgard, the world of humans, was a circular landmass surrounded by the ocean and bordered by other realms, including Asgard, the domain of the gods, and Hel, the land of the dead. This cosmology was built around Yggdrasil, the world tree, which connected the layers of existence and symbolized the flow of time, fate, and divine presence. The gods did not dwell in abstract heavens, but in concrete realms, positioned above or adjacent to the human world. And the firmament was seen as a physical boundary, guarded by divine forces. The notion of the flat earth was thus not only prevalent, but integral to the spiritual and cultural logic of these traditions. It gave meaning to sacred stories, explained natural phenomena, and justified rituals, festivals, and societal hierarchies. In many Native American cultures, similar flat earth cosmologies existed, often involving a central world mountain or tree, a surrounding ocean or river, and layered heavens and underworlds. The sky was a dome, held up by invisible forces or spiritual beings, and celestial events were interpreted as messages or actions from the gods. These beliefs were expressed through oral traditions, dances, symbolic art, and sacred ceremonies that maintained social cohesion and cosmic awareness. In African and Polynesian cosmologies too, the earth was often described as flat, with the sky as a roof and the underworld as a place beneath the soil. These models were passed down through generations and maintained a sense of wonder and reverence for the world as a spiritual creation. Across cultures, the flat earth served as more than just a geographic assumption. It was a canvas upon which meaning, identity, and divine connection were projected. While the scientific model of a spherical earth would eventually take hold, these earlier worldviews should not be dismissed as mere errors, but appreciated as meaningful attempts to explain existence through the tools and insights available at the time. the enduring presence of the flat Earth in religious and mythological contexts shows that cosmology was never just about measurement or geometry, but about orientation in a sacred cosmos where human life had purpose, direction, and divine oversight. The shift away from these models was gradual and often resisted, not simply because of ignorance, but because it meant the unraveling of systems that had governed not only the stars, but also the soul. These early beliefs laid the groundwork for both scientific curiosity and theological introspection, and they continue to influence culture, art, and spiritual imagination to this day. The development of classical astronomy marked a pivotal shift in the understanding of Earth's shape, moving from mythological and religious conceptions of a flat world to evidence-based models that increasingly pointed toward a spherical Earth. Ancient Greek philosophers and mathematicians played a central role in this transformation by applying geometry, observation, and logical reasoning to the celestial phenomena visible in the night sky. As early as the 6th century BCE, Pythagoras proposed that the Earth was spherical, not only due to philosophical ideals of symmetry and perfection, but also because of observed patterns, such as the circular shadow the Earth casts on the Moon during a lunar eclipse. His ideas were further developed by later thinkers such as Plato and Aristotle, who offered both theoretical and empirical arguments for the Earth's roundness. Aristotle in particular cited several pieces of observational evidence, including the gradual disappearance of ships over the horizon, the difference in star constellations seen from various latitudes, and the curvature of the Earth's shadow during eclipses. These arguments were not merely abstract, but rooted in repeatable phenomena that suggested the Earth was not flat, but rather a finite and curved body. Eratosthenes, a Greek mathematician and librarian of Alexandria, conducted a famous experiment in the 3rd century BCE that provided a remarkably accurate estimate of the Earth's circumference. By measuring the angle of the sun's rays at noon in 2 different cities, Cyane and Alexandria, he was able to use basic geometry to calculate the planet's size with surprising precision. This method demonstrated not only the Earth's curvature, but also the power of mathematical reasoning in understanding the natural world. His findings were widely respected and became foundational to geographic and astronomical thinking in the ancient world. The notion of a spherical Earth was further refined by Hipparchus and Ptolemy, whose models of the cosmos included a round Earth situated at the center of a system of concentric celestial spheres. While their geocentric model would later be challenged, it nonetheless solidified the idea that Earth itself was a globe. Ptolemy's work in particular synthesized centuries of astronomical data into a comprehensive system that was accepted for over 1,000 years and became the cornerstone of medieval astronomy, both in the Islamic world and later in Christian Europe. In parallel, non-Greek cultures also contributed to the understanding of Earth's shape. In ancient India, some astronomical texts, such as those in the Vedanga, Jyotisha, and later works like the Surya Siddhanta, suggested a spherical Earth based on celestial calculations and timekeeping methods. Islamic scholars during the Golden Age of science built upon Greek and Indian sources to advance astronomical knowledge. Figures like al-Biruni not only measured Earth's circumference, but also discussed the physics of gravity in relation to a spherical body. These works were translated and transmitted across cultures, laying the groundwork for later European rediscoveries. The cumulative result of these efforts was a growing consensus among learned communities that the earth was round, even as popular belief often lagged behind. The visual and intuitive appeal of a flat surface was strong, especially in regions without access to advanced education. But in scholarly circles, the spherical earth was a well-established fact long before the Renaissance. The implications of a round earth went beyond astronomy, affecting navigation, geography, and philosophy. Maps began to incorporate curved grids, and globes were constructed to represent the Earth's surface. While these tools were not always widespread or accurate, they represented a move toward understanding the planet as a finite, yet continuous object, rather than an infinite flat plane. The idea of antipodes, people living on the opposite side of the Earth, was discussed and sometimes met with theological resistance. Yet the spherical model continued to gain ground through mathematical consistency and observational alignment. Classical astronomy thus represents not a sudden revelation, but a gradual layering of insight over centuries, as thinkers across different cultures built upon one another's work to refine the model of Earth. It was a testament to the power of observation logic and shared knowledge in overcoming intuitive but incorrect assumptions. The shift from flat to round did not happen overnight, nor was it uniformly accepted across all societies, but it laid the intellectual foundation upon which modern science would later be constructed. The spherical model of Earth survived periods of suppression, skepticism, and reinterpretation, yet its resilience lies in its ability to explain the world more accurately and consistently than the flat models that preceded it. In the context of the larger human journey from myth to measurement, classical astronomy stands as a turning point that reoriented humanity's view of its place in the cosmos. The Earth was no longer a central disk floating in a divine ocean, but a sphere suspended in space, following predictable patterns, governed by laws that could be understood and applied. This realization set the stage for future exploration and inquiry, and remains one of the earliest examples of science challenging and transforming deeply held worldviews. Despite the advances of classical astronomy and the growing body of evidence supporting a spherical Earth, the belief in a flat Earth did not disappear immediately, and in some regions and intellectual traditions, it persisted well into the Middle Ages, driven by a combination of religious interpretations, limited access to classical knowledge, and the isolation of local worldviews. During the early medieval period, much of the scientific and philosophical heritage of the classical world was lost or obscured in Western Europe due to political instability, the collapse of Roman institutions, and the decline in widespread literacy and education. In this context, religious authority became the dominant source of knowledge, and biblical descriptions of the world continued to shape popular and theological conceptions of the cosmos. Interpretations of Scripture that described the earth as having corners, ends, foundations, or a firmament were sometimes taken literally, reinforcing the image of a flat earth bounded by physical and divine structures. Although many early Christian scholars, such as Augustine, and later thinkers like Thomas Aquinas, accepted, or at least did not object to the idea of a spherical earth, others maintained more literalist views, grounded in their reading of sacred texts. These interpretations were not necessarily ignorant, but reflected the broader epistemological frameworks of the time, in which divine revelation was considered the highest form of truth, and empirical observation was often secondary or even suspect. In parallel, monastic and ecclesiastical writers sometimes reproduced outdated or simplified cosmological diagrams that depicted the world as a flat disk surrounded by oceans and encased in celestial spheres. These images served didactic and symbolic purposes rather than scientific ones, and they perpetuated older worldviews in the absence of widespread access to Greek and Roman astronomical writings. At the same time, in the Islamic world and in parts of Asia and Byzantium, classical knowledge was better preserved and expanded upon. Scholars such as al-Farghani, al-Biruni, and al-Khwarizmi wrote extensively about the spherical nature of Earth, conducted measurements of its size, and developed accurate astronomical models that would later influence European thought. However, due to linguistic and cultural barriers, these insights were not immediately or uniformly transmitted to Western Europe, and their influence was delayed until the later stages of the medieval period, especially through translations made in Spain and Sicily during the 12th and 13th centuries. Until then, flat Earth beliefs continued to exist in various forms, often side by side with more accurate models, and without clear institutional enforcement of one view over another. In folk traditions and rural communities, the idea of a flat Earth may have remained more intuitive simply because it aligned with daily sensory experience and required no specialized knowledge to understand. The land appeared flat, the sky seemed to form a dome above, and travelers rarely ventured far enough to encounter curvature or contradictions. In such settings, cosmology was not a matter of scientific accuracy, but of practical orientation and symbolic meaning, and so older models persisted out of habit rather than doctrinal insistence. It is also worth noting that many educated people in the Middle Ages were aware of the spherical Earth and wrote about it openly. For example, the Venerable Bede, an English monk from the 8th century, referenced the Earth's roundness in his works, as did later scholars such as Isidore of Seville and Johannes de Sacrobosco. Their writings show that the flat Earth model was not universal even within religious circles, and that knowledge of the globe's shape was preserved, albeit unevenly, across time and geography. The notion that medieval people universally believed in a flat Earth is itself a modern myth, popularized in part by 19th century writers seeking to portray the Middle Ages as intellectually backward and to frame the scientific revolution as a dramatic break from a dark and ignorant past. In reality, the medieval world was intellectually diverse, and while some individuals and communities may have held flat Earth beliefs, others embraced, or at least tolerated, more accurate models based on available evidence and philosophical reasoning. The persistence of flat Earth ideas during the Middle Ages thus reflects the complexity of cultural transmission, the interplay between faith and observation, and the uneven development of knowledge across different regions and social classes. It was not a monolithic belief imposed from above, but rather a patchwork of inherited traditions, local interpretations, and evolving perspectives. As Europe began to emerge from the early medieval period and entered the High Middle Ages, increased contact with the Islamic world through trade war and translation brought renewed access to classical texts and scientific methods. This intellectual revival helped lay the foundations for a more widespread acceptance of the spherical Earth, particularly among educated elites, and eventually contributed to the navigational innovations that would enable global exploration. However, even as these ideas gained ground, echoes of older flat Earth models lingered in art literature and popular belief, often more as metaphor than scientific assertion. The enduring presence of these beliefs during the Middle Ages reminds us that human understanding is not simply a linear ascent from ignorance to truth, but a layered process shaped by context, tradition, and the tools available to perceive and interpret the world. The scientific revolution brought about a profound transformation in humanity's understanding of the natural world by challenging long-held assumptions and relying instead on observation, experimentation, and reason. This intellectual shift laid the groundwork for a clearer and more widely accepted understanding of the Earth's true shape. The period between the 16th and 18th centuries saw a growing emphasis on direct measurement, systematic inquiry, and mathematical modeling, which collectively began to displace both religious dogma and inherited misconceptions. As navigation improved and voyages of exploration became more frequent, the practical realities of Earth's curvature could no longer be ignored. Sailors noticed that ships disappeared over the horizon hull first, and that stars visible in the northern hemisphere were no longer visible as they moved southward. These empirical observations aligned with the spherical Earth model and provided tangible evidence that could be repeated and confirmed. Additionally, as global travel increased, explorers documented how time and daylight changed in predictable ways, depending on latitude and longitude, which made sense only on a curved rotating Earth. These phenomena were not merely theoretical, but became central to practical activities such as navigation, mapmaking, and trade. The need for precise geographic information led to the development of increasingly accurate globes and projection systems, and the idea of a flat Earth gradually lost its remaining foothold among educated individuals. One of the most significant moments in this scientific awakening came with the work of Nicholas Copernicus, who proposed a heliocentric model in which the Earth orbited the Sun. Although this model primarily restructured the cosmos, it implicitly reinforced the notion of a spherical Earth moving through space. Later astronomers such as Johannes Kepler and Galileo Galilei built upon Copernican theory and provided additional observational data that confirmed and extended the new vision of the universe. Galileo's use of the telescope revealed the phases of Venus and the moons of Jupiter, providing strong evidence that not all celestial bodies revolved around Earth, and supporting the idea that Earth itself was a planet in motion. These discoveries weakened the geocentric view, which had often coexisted with flat Earth notions, and they bolstered a framework in which a spherical Earth was logically consistent with all other astronomical data. Isaac Newton further solidified this understanding through his laws of motion and universal gravitation. According to Newton, the Earth was not a perfect sphere, but an oblate spheroid, bulging slightly at the equator due to its rotation. His mathematical formulation explained not only the shape of the Earth, but also the behavior of tides, planetary orbits, and the force that held the Moon in place. Newtonian physics provided a coherent model that could predict and explain a vast array of natural phenomena, and it left little room for flat Earth interpretations. The language of science increasingly became the dominant means of explaining the world, and the emphasis on empirical data meant that only theories with testable and observable predictions could remain credible. In this context, the flat Earth model was not just incorrect, but scientifically obsolete. It failed to account for measurable phenomena, and it lacked the mathematical elegance and predictive power of the spherical model. As scientific education expanded, especially through the founding of academies and universities, the idea of a flat Earth faded from mainstream discourse. It persisted only in isolated pockets of resistance, usually among those who rejected modern science altogether, or who interpreted religious texts in an exclusively literal manner. Meanwhile, technological advances such as the invention of the sextant, and improvements in chronometry made it possible to measure latitude and longitude with great precision, further confirming the reality of a curved, rotating Earth. By the end of the 18th century, the weight of evidence in favor of the spherical Earth was overwhelming. Global navigation, astronomical observations, and the mathematical models that unified them left little doubt about the Earth's shape. The shift was not merely about replacing one belief with another, but about embracing a new way of knowing, rooted in skepticism, measurement, and open inquiry. The scientific revolution had done more than prove the Earth was round. It had redefined the very process by which humans arrived at truth. Through this lens, the persistence of flat Earth belief became not just a matter of cosmological error, but a rejection of the scientific method itself. This transition did not happen in isolation, but was supported by changes in printing communication and education that allowed knowledge to spread more widely and rapidly than ever before. Textbooks, globes, atlases, and public lectures brought the spherical Earth into classrooms and homes, making it part of common knowledge rather than elite speculation. The Earth was now understood as a dynamic planet in a vast cosmos, governed by natural laws that could be observed, tested, and understood. This realization marked a critical step in humanity's intellectual journey, and it remains one of the defining achievements of the modern era. The 19th century marked a curious turning point in the history of flat Earth belief, not because the idea gained scientific credibility, but because it transformed from an ancient worldview into a modern conspiracy-oriented movement shaped by changing attitudes toward authority, religion, and scientific institutions. While by this time the spherical shape of the Earth was thoroughly demonstrated through navigation, astronomy, and physics, a small number of individuals began to reassert flat Earth ideas, often as part of broader ideological campaigns. This shift did not come from scientific discovery, but rather from a growing mistrust in emerging secular institutions and a desire to return to what was seen as pure scriptural truth. One of the most influential figures in the revival of flat Earth theory during this period was Samuel Rowbotham, a British writer who published under the pseudonym Parallax. In 1849, he released a pamphlet titled Zetetic Astronomy, in which he rejected the spherical model and argued that the Earth was a flat plane centered around the North Pole and bordered by an ice wall. Rowbotham claimed to base his views on direct observation and simple experiments such as watching ships on the horizon and measuring surface water levels. His method, called the Zetetic method, emphasized personal perception over abstract mathematical reasoning and dismissed centuries of astronomical science as flawed or deceptive. He conducted public lectures and debates across England, drawing significant crowds and sparking controversy. Rowbotham's writings gained a modest following and inspired the formation of groups that shared and promoted his ideas. Following his death in 1884, his work was carried on by figures such as Lady Elizabeth Blount, who founded the Universal Zetetic Society in 1892. The society published newsletters, organized meetings, and tried to build a coherent alternative to conventional science based on the flat Earth model. These efforts coincided with a broader cultural trend during the Victorian era, in which science and religion were increasingly viewed in conflict, particularly after the publication of Darwin's theory of evolution in 1859. For many who felt that modern science threatened their religious worldview, the flat Earth theory provided a way to defend literal interpretations of the Bible. Passages referring to the four corners of the earth, the firmament, and the immovable world were taken at face value and used as evidence that mainstream science had strayed from divine truth. The flat Earth thus became not only a cosmological position, but also a statement of resistance against what was perceived as moral and spiritual decline. Its adherents often framed themselves as guardians of truth, fighting against a corrupt elite that had sold lies to the masses. The media of the time gave occasional attention to these debates, and some newspapers reported on flat Earth lectures, often with a mix of curiosity and ridicule. Though the movement remained fringe, it demonstrated how pseudo-scientific ideas could persist and adapt in a changing world. This period also saw an increase in the use of printed materials to spread unconventional ideas, including pamphlets, newsletters, and books that bypassed academic peer review and reached general audiences directly. The Flat Earth movement was among the earliest examples of a modern conspiracy culture, using mass communication to build an alternative epistemology rooted not in evidence, but in skepticism toward established institutions. Although mainstream science continued to advance through the development of technologies such as the telegraph, photography, and early aviation, the Flat Earth movement maintained a small but resilient presence. Some adherents attempted to produce their own maps and charts, while others challenged scientists to public debates. These events rarely changed minds, but they served to strengthen the identity of believers who saw themselves as truth seekers in a world of deception. In the United States, flat Earth ideas found new supporters among religious fundamentalists and anti-modernist groups, particularly in regions where scientific education was limited or where institutional distrust was high. The late 19th and early 20th centuries also witnessed the rise of other pseudo-scientific movements, such as phrenology and spiritualism, which shared some of the same resistance to mainstream science and reliance on personal experience as sources of truth. Flat Earth belief, during this time, became entangled with broader critiques of modernity, globalization, and secularism. It was no longer just a question of the Earth's shape, but of who gets to define reality. By reframing the flat Earth as a challenge to authority, rather than as an outdated belief, the movement managed to survive and evolve into the 20th century, where it would later merge with new forms of media and conspiracy thinking. Though marginal, the Flat Earth movement in the 19th century laid the ideological foundation for the revival it would experience in the age of the Internet. The themes of distrust in elites' personal empowerment through alternative knowledge and literal interpretations of religious texts continued to shape the movement's identity. It was not merely a rejection of science, but a cultural and psychological response to the uncertainties of a rapidly changing world. In this context, the persistence of flat Earth belief was less about evidence and more about belonging opposition and the search for meaning in an era of transformation. In the early 20th century, the Flat Earth movement gradually shifted from isolated individuals and scattered writings into more organized structures, with formal membership publications and public outreach efforts. While the number of adherents remained small compared to mainstream scientific consensus, the creation of flat Earth societies allowed believers to develop a shared identity, engage in collective advocacy, and challenge conventional knowledge with renewed vigor. These societies often presented themselves as truth-seeking communities, devoted to uncovering what they perceived to be centuries of misinformation spread by governments, scientists, and educational institutions. One of the most notable of these groups was the Flat Earth Society, founded in the mid-20th century in the United States. Under the leadership of Samuel Shenton, The society positioned itself as the successor to earlier zetetic movements and continued to promote Rowbotham's Earth model, which depicted a flat disk with the North Pole at the center and an encompassing ice wall at the edges. Shenton was a skilled communicator who used newsletters, pamphlets, and public correspondence to engage with both supporters and critics. He attempted to bring flat Earth ideas into contemporary debates and often framed the society's mission as one of intellectual freedom and resistance to orthodoxy. Despite limited resources, he managed to keep the society active through regular publications and participation in science discussions, though his views were largely dismissed by the academic community. After Shenton's death, the society was taken over by Charles K. Johnson, who expanded its influence by reaching out to a global audience and encouraging direct challenges to scientific authority. Johnson believed that the spherical Earth model was part of a larger conspiracy aimed at undermining biblical truth and promoting secularism. His writings frequently combined scientific denialism with religious conviction, and he often engaged in correspondence with media outlets, universities, and individual scientists, challenging them to debates and requesting evidence for Earth's curvature. He claimed to have supporters in multiple countries and maintained that the growing reach of the society was proof of its legitimacy. Johnson's leadership style was deeply personal, and his home in California became the unofficial headquarters of the movement. From there, he produced newsletters, engaged in interviews, and responded to an increasing volume of mail from curious individuals and dedicated followers alike. While the Flat Earth Society under Johnson remained a fringe group, its activities represented a persistent undercurrent of skepticism and resistance that continued into the digital age. During this period, the Flat Earth narrative began to intersect with other forms of conspiracy thinking, including skepticism about the moon landing, mistrust of government agencies, and suspicions surrounding global organizations such as NASA. The society often argued that photographs of Earth from space were fabricated and that space exploration itself was a hoax designed to support the spherical model. These claims were not based on scientific evidence, but rather on a deep mistrust of institutional knowledge and a preference for personal observation and interpretation. This approach appealed to individuals who felt alienated from mainstream discourse and who saw themselves as independent thinkers resisting mass deception. The Society's publications reflected this stance, often highlighting inconsistencies in official explanations and encouraging readers to trust their senses over expert opinion. Despite its rejection by academia, the Society continued to attract media attention, especially when its members participated in interviews or made provocative public statements. This exposure kept the movement in the public eye and contributed to its endurance, even as scientific and technological advances made the round Earth model more visible and verifiable than ever. The persistence of flat Earth societies also reflected broader cultural dynamics. In an era marked by rapid technological change, social upheaval, and increasing complexity, the appeal of a simple and intuitive model of the world was strong for some. The flat Earth theory offered a comprehensible framework that placed individuals at the center of creation and provided a sense of certainty in a world that often felt disorienting. Moreover, the act of challenging mainstream science became an expression of autonomy and defiance, reinforcing the identity of believers as courageous truth seekers rather than misinformed outliers. As the 20th century progressed, the rise of new media forms, particularly radio, television, and later the internet, created additional platforms for flat Earth advocacy. Though the Society experienced periods of decline, its message never entirely disappeared, and its emphasis on personal inquiry resonated with individuals dissatisfied with conventional explanations. By the end of the century, the Flat Earth Society had become both a symbol of resistance and a subject of ridicule. To many, it represented an outdated belief, long disproven by evidence. but to its members it stood for intellectual freedom and the right to question authority. The movement's survival, despite overwhelming scientific refutation, was a testament to the power of narrative community and the human desire for clarity in a complex world. The flat earth societies of the 20th century may not have convinced the broader public, but they laid the groundwork for the digital resurgence that would follow in the 21st century, where new tools and platforms would enable an even wider spread of their message. The organized efforts of these societies transformed a once ancient worldview into a modern cultural phenomenon, fueled not by evidence, but by conviction and the enduring belief that reality itself is up for debate. With the emergence of the Internet in the late 20th and early 21st centuries, the Flat Earth movement found a new and powerful medium through which it could spread its ideas, recruit new followers, and challenge mainstream scientific consensus on an unprecedented scale. Unlike the earlier Flat Earth societies that relied on newsletters, printed pamphlets, and public lectures, the digital age provided an open and decentralized platform where users could produce, share, and consume content without the need for institutional approval or editorial oversight. Forums, video sharing platforms, blogs, and social media networks became the new public squares in which flat earth proponents could voice their opinions and find like-minded individuals. This shift allowed a once fringe belief to gain visibility and traction across geographical and cultural boundaries. The speed at which information travels on the internet, coupled with the algorithms that prioritize engagement and sensational content, created an environment in which conspiracy theories could thrive. Flat Earth videos that questioned space exploration or claimed to expose government deception often garnered hundreds of thousands or even millions of views. These videos were typically framed as documentaries or investigations, and they combined selective scientific jargon, personal anecdotes, and misinterpreted evidence to create a compelling narrative. The tone was often confident and accusatory, suggesting that mainstream science was hiding the truth, and that viewers who accepted the round Earth model were simply victims of indoctrination. This framing appealed especially to individuals already predisposed to distrust authority, or those who had previously engaged with other conspiratorial content. The internet thus enabled a self-reinforcing feedback loop in which flat Earth believers could share content, validate one another's doubts, and escalate their claims without facing rigorous critique. Online communities became the heart of this new wave of flat Earth advocacy. Platforms like YouTube, Reddit, Facebook, and later TikTok hosted countless pages and groups dedicated to discussing and promoting flat Earth theories. These communities often portrayed themselves as open-minded truth seekers rather than dogmatic believers, and they encouraged newcomers to perform their own experiments, question what they were taught in school, and examine the world with fresh eyes. Common talking points included the visible horizon appearing flat, the failure to perceive curvature from an airplane window, and the alleged inconsistencies in NASA's imagery and missions. These discussions were not governed by scientific methodology, but by rhetorical persuasion and the emotional appeal of being part of a secret truth that others were too blind to see. In many cases, participation in these communities provided a sense of belonging and purpose, particularly for individuals who felt marginalized, disillusioned, or alienated by mainstream society. The act of rejecting widely accepted knowledge became not just an intellectual position, but an identity, one that was reinforced through likes, shares, comments, and real-world meetups. The internet also allowed flat Earth content to intersect with other conspiracy movements, including anti-vaccination rhetoric, climate change, denial, and secret government agenda narratives. This convergence of beliefs created a broader ecosystem in which mistrust of institutions became the common thread, and flat Earth theory became one of many ways to express skepticism about the world. The rise of influencers who gained followings by promoting flat Earth ideas further amplified the movement's visibility and reach. These individuals often branded themselves as independent researchers, and their success inspired others to produce similar content. Despite numerous attempts by scientists, educators, and media outlets to debunk flat Earth claims, the movement showed remarkable resilience. Efforts to counter misinformation were often dismissed as part of the very conspiracy that believers claimed to be exposing. The rejection of expert opinion and reliance on personal interpretation meant that flat Earth advocates were largely immune to conventional arguments. Even when presented with overwhelming evidence such as satellite images, GPS data, or flight routes, they would reinterpret or dismiss this information as fabricated. This epistemological barrier made dialogue difficult and reinforced the movement's insularity. However, the digital spread of flat Earth ideas did not go unnoticed. It raised broader concerns about the nature of truth in the digital age, the role of social media in shaping beliefs, and the vulnerabilities of information ecosystems. Researchers began to study how and why people came to believe in flat Earth theory, despite its scientific implausibility. They found that belief was often less about the actual shape of the Earth and more about broader psychological factors, such as a desire for certainty, distrust of authority, and the human tendency to seek patterns and narratives. As a result, flat Earth theory served as a case study in the dynamics of modern misinformation and the challenges of digital literacy. Educational institutions, tech companies, and governments responded in various ways, ranging from the promotion of critical thinking curricula to content moderation and fact-checking initiatives. Still, the Flat Earth movement persisted, evolving and adapting to changes in platform policies and public discourse. Some members shifted to encrypted messaging apps or created their own websites to avoid censorship. Others adjusted their language to avoid triggering moderation algorithms. Through it all, the internet remained the central engine driving the movement's continued existence. While the actual number of flat Earth believers may be small relative to the general population, their outsized presence online ensured that their ideas remained part of the public conversation. The story of flat Earth belief in the digital age is not simply about ignorance or scientific failure, but about the complex ways in which technology, identity, and culture intersect. It reveals how information can be both democratized and distorted, and how beliefs, once confined to the margins, can find new life in the infinite space of the internet. The persistence and resurgence of flat Earth belief in the modern era cannot be explained solely through gaps in education or scientific literacy. While knowledge deficits may contribute to misunderstandings about geography, astronomy, and physics, they do not fully account for the emotional conviction and identity investment that many flat Earth believers display. At the heart of the phenomenon lies a complex web of psychological drivers that shape how individuals process information, form beliefs, and relate to authority and community. One of the most fundamental mechanisms behind the flat Earth mindset is confirmation bias, the tendency to seek out, interpret, and remember information in a way that confirms existing beliefs while ignoring or dismissing contradictory evidence. When an individual becomes open to the idea that the Earth might be flat, their attention naturally gravitates toward content that supports this view. Videos, articles, and forum discussions that affirm the flat Earth narrative are consumed eagerly, while mainstream scientific resources are seen as suspect, biased, or even deliberately misleading. This process is intensified by the echo chambers of online communities, where dissent is often discouraged and members reinforce one another's interpretations and convictions. In such environments, belief becomes self-reinforcing. The more time one spends engaging with flat Earth content, the stronger the belief becomes, regardless of its foundation in reality. Another key psychological factor is the human need for cognitive closure, the desire to find definite answers and avoid ambiguity. In a world characterized by complexity, uncertainty, and rapid change, flat Earth belief offers a simple and intuitively satisfying explanation of one of the most basic questions about our existence: where we live. Unlike the spherical Earth model, which involves abstract principles like gravity, axial rotation, and curved space, the flat Earth model is immediately graspable. It appeals to the senses, especially the visual perception of a flat horizon, and it provides a sense of control in a world that often feels disorienting and impersonal. This simplicity is not just attractive, but comforting, offering believers a psychological refuge from the messiness of modern life. Closely related to this is the appeal of contrarianism and the deep-seated desire in some individuals to feel special, independent, or intellectually superior. Believing in the flat Earth theory positions one as part of a select group that sees through the lies accepted by the masses. It transforms disbelief into a form of empowerment. Being in possession of the so-called truth makes the believer feel enlightened, awakened, and uniquely courageous in their willingness to challenge the status quo. This desire to feel special is often reinforced by narratives of persecution and resistance. Many flat Earth believers see themselves as victims of censorship, ridicule, and suppression, which in turn validates their belief. If powerful forces are trying so hard to silence them, they reason, then their ideas must contain some dangerous truth. This martyrdom complex reinforces group identity and increases resistance to outside influence. Moreover, humans are inherently social creatures, and belief in conspiracy theories like flat Earth often serves a community function. Many adherents describe their entry into the movement as less about science and more about connection. In flat Earth circles, members find friendship, validation, and purpose. They attend conferences, join group chats, and form bonds that transcend geography. The belief becomes not just a claim about reality, but the basis for belonging. To leave the flat Earth community is not merely to change one's mind, it is to risk losing one's social world, which makes deconversion particularly difficult. Distrust of authority is another deep psychological theme that underlies flat Earth belief. For many, The theory is not primarily about the Earth's shape, but about skepticism toward institutions like governments, universities, and scientific organizations. Believers often describe a general sense of betrayal by experts and a belief that official narratives are tools of control. In this light, rejecting the round Earth becomes symbolic of rejecting all forms of imposed truth. It is an act of rebellion, a stand against what is perceived as intellectual elitism and centralized power. This mindset aligns flat Earth theory with other conspiracy beliefs, including those related to vaccines, climate change, and historical events. These beliefs are connected by a shared worldview in which nothing is as it seems, and only those who question everything can access the truth. Finally, the role of personality traits should not be overlooked. Studies have shown that individuals with high levels of openness to experience, low trust in authority, and a tendency toward magical thinking are more susceptible to conspiracy theories. They often prefer intuition over analysis and emotion over evidence. For such individuals, flat Earth belief is not a failure of logic, but a logical extension of how they see the world. In this sense, flat Earth theory functions less as a scientific hypothesis and more as a psychological coping mechanism. It offers meaning in chaos, identity in confusion, and certainty in doubt. This does not mean that all believers are irrational or unintelligent. On the contrary, many are articulate, creative, and deeply curious. But their curiosity is channeled through a framework that resists falsification and embraces narratives of deception. The belief is not easily dislodged by facts, because it is not grounded in facts, but in emotional needs and social dynamics. Understanding the psychological underpinnings of flat Earth belief is essential, not only for countering misinformation, but for addressing the deeper anxieties and needs that drive it. Only by recognizing the human side of belief can we begin to bridge the divide between scientific understanding and popular conviction. The flat Earth belief system is built upon a foundation of mistrust, personal observation, and a rejection of conventional science. But the scientific evidence for a spherical Earth is overwhelming, well documented, and based on centuries of measurement, mathematics, and empirical observation. When addressing flat Earth claims, it is crucial to begin with the recognition that the Earth's shape has been known to be round since ancient times and confirmed with increasing precision through multiple independent methods. One of the most immediate and observable pieces of evidence is the curvature of the horizon. Although this curvature is subtle and may not be easily perceived from ground level, it becomes apparent at higher altitudes, such as in commercial airplanes or from mountaintops. Photographs and videos from weather balloons and space missions show a continuous curvature that cannot be accounted for by flat models. Critics often claim these images are computer-generated or manipulated, but the consistency across nations, space agencies, private missions, and amateur balloon launches provides converging lines of evidence that collectively rule out the possibility of coordinated fabrication. The phenomenon of ships disappearing over the horizon also illustrates the Earth's curvature. Rather than shrinking evenly as they move away, ships are seen to vanish bottom first, a behavior that aligns precisely with expectations from a curved surface. This observation, recorded for centuries, cannot be explained under a flat Earth model without resorting to unsupported optical theories or speculative physics. Another category of evidence lies in the field of astronomy. The Earth casts a round shadow on the Moon during a lunar eclipse, and this shadow is always curved regardless of the Moon's position in the sky. This observation led even ancient Greek thinkers to conclude that the Earth must be spherical. Furthermore, the constellations visible in the night sky change as one moves north or south, which only makes sense on a round Earth, where the observer's position affects their angle of view. Flat Earth models cannot account for why certain stars are visible from the southern hemisphere and never seen in the north. These discrepancies grow more pronounced when considering global navigation. The GPS system functions through a network of satellites orbiting the Earth. These satellites rely on line-of-sight signals that are only possible if the Earth is curved. The precision of GPS location services, satellite communication, and even satellite internet all depend on orbital mechanics that flat Earth theory cannot coherently explain. The use of great circle routes by airlines, which appear curved on flat maps but are the shortest path on a globe, further validates the spherical model. Flight times between locations in the southern hemisphere, such as between South Africa and Australia, are consistent with a round Earth and do not align with the distorted distances found on flat Earth maps. Measurements of Earth's dimensions also provide irrefutable evidence. The ancient experiment by Eratosthenes used the differing angles of shadows cast in two cities to calculate the Earth's circumference with surprising accuracy. His method, replicated by students and educators today, yields consistent results. The fact that the sun casts different angles of light at the same time in different locations contradicts the notion of a small, nearby sun floating above a flat plane. Modern instruments such as gyroscopes and accelerometers also detect Earth's rotation. The Foucault pendulum, which swings in a direction that shifts predictably based on the Earth's rotation and latitude, offers a direct demonstration of Earth's movement beneath our feet. Meanwhile, seismology shows that earthquake waves travel through the Earth in patterns that only make sense if the planet has a layered spherical structure. If Earth were flat, seismic waves would behave entirely differently and fail to match recorded data. The Coriolis effect, responsible for the rotation of weather systems and the direction of ocean currents, further supports the rotating globe model. Storm systems spin in opposite directions in the northern and southern hemispheres due to the Coriolis force, a phenomenon absent from any flat Earth explanation. One cannot ignore the body of evidence from space exploration. Human missions to the moon, satellites capturing real-time Earth images, probes sent to other planets, and international cooperation in space all point to a coherent and predictive model of a spherical Earth orbiting the Sun. Even amateur rocketeers and high-altitude balloon hobbyists have captured footage of the Earth's curvature using commercially available equipment. These visual confirmations are not dependent on trust in large institutions, but are reproducible by individuals with modest resources. Furthermore, mathematical models used to launch satellites, land rovers on Mars, or predict eclipses all rely on an understanding of gravity and celestial mechanics that depend on Earth being round. These calculations produce precise results that match observations and would fail catastrophically if based on a flat Earth. The round Earth model also explains variations in daylight hours, time zones, and the changing length of shadows throughout the year. The fact that it is daylight in one location and nighttime in another can only be explained by a rotating sphere exposed to sunlight on one half at a time. The flat Earth model, which struggles to explain even basic timekeeping across the globe, offers no consistent or testable alternative. Finally, the round Earth is not just a theory, but a model with predictive power. It allows us to launch satellites, navigate aircraft, drill for oil, track hurricanes, and communicate across continents. It has been validated through physics, engineering, and daily human experience. Unlike flat Earth claims, which rely on intuition, selective skepticism, and misinterpretation of data, the spherical Earth is supported by an interlocking web of evidence across disciplines and cultures. In science, the strength of a model lies in its ability to explain and predict phenomena. The round Earth does both, with unmatched consistency, precision, and utility. While belief in a flat Earth may stem from personal doubt, cultural narratives, or emotional needs, it collapses under the scrutiny of scientific investigation. The Earth is round, and the evidence is everywhere. The flat Earth movement in the digital age has been heavily influenced by the voices of online content creators who produce videos, host podcasts, run websites, and manage social media accounts centered around the belief that the Earth is not a sphere, but rather a flat plane surrounded by an ice wall or dome. These individuals often present themselves as independent thinkers or citizen scientists and position their work as a form of activism against institutional deception. The motivations behind their continued creation of flat Earth content are diverse and complex. And while some may be driven by genuine belief, others appear to be motivated by social recognition, financial gain, or a desire to cultivate personal influence in a niche but passionate community. At the heart of many flat Earth influencers' success is the ability to create compelling and emotionally resonant narratives. Rather than engaging with scientific evidence in a neutral or methodical way, they often craft stories that paint them as heroes, uncovering hidden truths in a world filled with lies. They use language that appeals to the viewer's sense of autonomy and skepticism, encouraging audiences to question authority and think for themselves. This messaging can be particularly powerful in an era when many individuals feel alienated by bureaucracy, distrustful of government, and overwhelmed by scientific complexity. By simplifying the world and identifying clear enemies, such as NASA, mainstream media, or educational institutions, content creators give their audiences a framework through which to understand not only the shape of the Earth, but their place in the broader social structure. Monetization also plays a significant role in sustaining flat Earth content production. On platforms like YouTube, content that garners high engagement can generate revenue through ad views, memberships, and super chats. While flat Earth videos may be demonetized by platform policies due to their conspiratorial nature, many creators supplement their income through merchandise sales, crowdfunding platforms like Patreon, or donations from loyal followers. These economic incentives can create a feedback loop in which creators feel pressured to produce increasingly dramatic or controversial content to maintain visibility and revenue streams. The most successful influencers in the flat Earth space are often those who blend sensational claims with charismatic delivery, frequent uploads, and direct interaction with their audiences. Over time, this dynamic can shift their role from amateur theorists to quasi-celebrities within the conspiracy ecosystem. With all the social validation and identity reinforcement that status entails, in some cases, creators may no longer care whether the theory they promote is accurate. The attention, influence, and financial stability they gain from the belief system become more important than the belief itself. This can lead to a form of bad faith advocacy, where content is designed not to discover truth, but to sustain an audience and a brand. Another factor in the motivations of flat Earth influencers is the desire for community and belonging. Many of these individuals report feeling isolated or dismissed in their offline lives. But online, they find a sense of purpose and solidarity. The process of creating and sharing content becomes not only a means of communication, but a way of constructing an identity. As they receive feedback from followers, experience viral success, or are invited to speak at conferences, they internalize their role as leaders in a movement. This reinforcement makes it increasingly difficult to reverse course or express doubt. Publicly renouncing flat Earth beliefs after achieving a position of prominence would mean losing credibility, audience, and in some cases, income. For this reason, many influencers become locked into their positions, unable to question the narrative they helped build. In rare cases where individuals have publicly distanced themselves from the movement, they often report feelings of shame, regret, and social isolation, highlighting the personal cost of ideological entrenchment. Flat Earth content creators also benefit from the visual appeal of their materials. Videos and graphics often feature bold visuals, simplified diagrams, and pseudo-scientific demonstrations that appear convincing to non-experts. These visuals can mimic the aesthetics of scientific media, giving the illusion of credibility. Additionally, creators often use emotionally charged language, music, and editing techniques that elicit feelings of curiosity, fear, or empowerment. These production choices are not accidental. They are strategically employed to increase viewer engagement, prolong watch time, and maximize shares. The emotional resonance of such content can override critical thinking, especially when viewers lack a strong foundation in scientific reasoning or media literacy. In this way, content creators leverage both cognitive biases and emotional appeal to deepen belief and foster loyalty among their followers. Importantly, they often encourage interactivity by posing questions to the audience, issuing challenges to debunk their claims, or promoting community experiments. This participatory model strengthens the movement by involving followers directly in the process of belief construction. Ultimately, the motivations of flat Earth content creators are shaped by a mixture of belief, social dynamics, and material incentives. Whether driven by sincerity or strategy, their content has a disproportionate impact on public discourse because of how effectively it spreads in online environments. As platforms struggle to moderate misinformation, and as audiences continue to seek alternative perspectives, these creators will likely continue to play a central role in the evolution of the Flat Earth movement. Their influence is not based on the strength of their arguments, but on their ability to engage, entertain, and empower. In understanding their motivations, we gain insight into why the Flat Earth theory persists, despite overwhelming scientific consensus to the contrary. The theory is no longer just a fringe belief, but a social phenomenon shaped by identity, economy, and the structure of digital communication. In today's world, the Flat Earth theory holds a peculiar position within the broader landscape of cultural discourse and public consciousness. It is widely recognized and frequently ridiculed, yet it continues to generate interest, engagement, and emotional reactions from people across the globe. Although the number of individuals who sincerely believe in a flat Earth remains relatively small, the topic occupies a disproportionately large space in conversations about science, skepticism, media, and belief. This is partly due to the symbolic nature of the flat Earth idea, which represents more than just an alternative model of planetary geometry. Instead, it has come to embody resistance to authority challenges, to established knowledge, and the rise of personalized truths in an era of fragmented information. The flat Earth debate often surfaces not because people are genuinely undecided about the shape of the planet, but because the theory touches on deeper concerns about who gets to define truth and how people relate to the institutions that claim to represent reality. In contemporary culture, the flat earth theory is frequently used as shorthand for irrationality or delusion, and it is often cited in popular media to illustrate the dangers of misinformation and the erosion of trust in expertise. Late-night talk shows, social media posts, documentaries, and online debates frequently invoke flat earth belief as a humorous or cautionary example. However, this widespread mockery, while understandable, can have unintended effects. For believers, ridicule reinforces the perception that they are brave truth seekers being silenced by a conformist majority. For skeptics, it can lead to overconfidence in their own knowledge and a dismissal of the psychological and social reasons why conspiracy theories take root. As such, the flat earth debate acts as a mirror, reflecting not only the persistence of pseudoscience, but also the challenges of communication, empathy, and persuasion in a deeply divided information landscape. The internet has amplified the cultural presence of flat earth ideas far beyond their actual demographic support. Online platforms prioritize content that provokes engagement and controversy, and flat earth claims fit this mold perfectly. As a result, videos, articles, memes, and debates related to flat earth topics continue to circulate widely, often appearing in recommended feeds or trending topics. This visibility creates a sense of relevance and legitimacy that can attract the curious, the disillusioned, and the rebellious. While many people encounter flat earth content as entertainment or absurdity, others find in it an entry point into broader conspiratorial thinking. The cultural footprint of the theory extends into music, comedy, fashion, and even political discourse, with references appearing in song lyrics, comedy sketches, and public protests. This diffusion into mainstream culture blurs the line between satire and sincerity, making it more difficult to distinguish believers from trolls or provocateurs. Education and science. Communication efforts have responded to the flat earth resurgence with a mixture of concern and creativity. Educators have used the topic as a teaching tool to explore the scientific method, critical thinking, and the history of astronomy. Debunking videos and articles aim not only to refute flat earth claims, but also to demonstrate how science builds knowledge through evidence replication and peer review. Museums, planetariums, and science festivals have included exhibits or talks addressing flat earth theory as a way to engage audiences in conversations about skepticism and belief. However, the effectiveness of these efforts depends largely on how they are framed. Simply presenting facts is often insufficient when beliefs are rooted in identity, emotion, or distrust. Instead, successful communication often involves listening, building rapport, and addressing the underlying reasons why individuals are drawn to alternative explanations. The flat earth debate also intersects with broader societal trends, such as the rise of populism, the decline of institutional trust, and the increasing polarization of public opinion. In some circles, flat earth belief is seen as a political statement or a critique of elitism and technocracy. The theory becomes less about geology or astronomy and more about autonomy and resistance. This politicization adds another layer of complexity, making it harder to separate scientific discussion from ideological conflict. Meanwhile, the rapid evolution of digital media has changed how people form and maintain beliefs. Algorithm-driven content feeds filter information based on past behavior, creating echo chambers where flat Earth content can proliferate unchecked. The decline of shared epistemic frameworks means that people increasingly live in different informational worlds where basic facts are no longer universally agreed upon. In this context, the flat Earth theory is both a symptom and a symbol of deeper shifts in how society processes knowledge and authority. At the same time, the enduring presence of the flat Earth theory challenges scientists, educators, and communicators to reflect on their own assumptions. It prompts questions about how to rebuild trust, how to foster curiosity, and how to engage with those who reject conventional wisdom. It also reminds us that belief is not purely a rational process. People are influenced by emotions, communities' experiences, and values. Understanding the flat Earth phenomenon requires not only scientific literacy, but also cultural, psychological, and social insight. While it may be tempting to dismiss the theory outright, doing so risks overlooking the human stories behind the belief. Every flat Earth proponent is someone who has grappled with uncertainty, sought meaning, and found answers that make sense within their worldview. In conclusion, the flat Earth debate remains relevant not because of the theory's scientific merit, but because of its cultural resonance. It embodies the tensions between evidence and emotion, between consensus and individuality, and between authority and autonomy. As a cultural phenomenon, it challenges us to think more deeply about how we know what we know and how we engage with those who see the world differently. Whether approached with humor, frustration, or compassion, the flat Earth theory continues to provoke reflection on the nature of truth in a world where information is abundant, but consensus is increasingly rare.